So in other words, if Pope Francis's teachings are continuing to be put forward by Pope Leo, we'll say, well, Pope Leo, this is inconsistent with the following aspects of Catholic doctrine, and we'd like to have, a discussion. It was a turning of a page because the Pope Francis 12 years marked a radical break with what had happened under Pope Benedict. He needs to roll back fiducia supplicans and amoris laetitia. Latin Mass liberation, we just talked about that. Fourth thing would be that we should reaffirm that salvation is uniquely found in Jesus Christ.
What do you think his biggest challenge is going to be?
Bunch of challenges. I'll say the first one he should address is to get the Vatican.
By the way, my name is Joe McClane. I host a radio program called A Catholic Take, where we look at the world through a Catholic lens. I'd love for you to hang out with us. If you like it, give it a thumbs up and let us know what you think in the comments below.
Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McClane. Praise be to God. A part of the coverage last week that I depended upon was from Raymond Arroyo's Conclave team, and Father Gerald Murray was a key part of that team, and he joins us now, fresh back from Rome. Father Gerald Murray, welcome back. Thanks for hanging out with us.
You're welcome, Joe. Good to be with you.
Praise be to God in all things. Father, I just want to get your general feelings about your time in Rome. What was the atmosphere like? What was it like covering the conclave? I mean, you were not only on Raymond, but a lot of news outlets were having you on. So what was that experience like for you in general?
Well, there was, of course, a lot of excitement because now we were facing electing a new pope. And the big unanswered question was, would this be a pope in continuity with Pope Francis, or would this be a pope in continuity with St. John Paul II and Benedict XVI? So the question in everyone's mind is, where were things going to be going in the church? And that, of course, raised a lot of discussion because you had to examine the College of Cardinals. Many of them were unknown. They didn't know themselves very well. So it was sort of like the election was hard to predict. You could see certain places that things might be going, in terms of who's going to be the favorites and who can garner support, but a lot of questions. There was also, it was a turning of a page because the Pope Francis 12 years marked a radical break with what had happened under Pope Benedict. So the question was, of course, how do we analyze this, evaluate it, and where do we go from here? So this was not simply an election in which things would basically continue the way they were. This was going to be an election to make a decisive decision. Do we want to continue a liberalization program in the church, or do we want to return to a defense of Catholic teaching?
Okay, so do you think that we are then returning? Because, I think a lot of traditional Catholics like myself are cautiously optimistic, nervously hopeful. We're like not 100% sure, but we see some good things happening and we're encouraged by it. In his first address to the Cardinals, he used some language that seemed to suggest he was in line with Francis, talking about synodality and some other things. And then this morning, or yesterday afternoon, actually, I saw an article over at the stream. Rome likens Jesus to Buddha in a statement they put out yesterday from the Interfaith Dialogue team that, is confusing and ambiguous and very, very much of the Francis-esque era. So we're not sure. So how do you see it?
No, I think we have to give Pope Leo a chance to develop his teaching and who he's going to appoint to the different Roman dicasteries, the people are going to be leading the different departments. Actions and words will be judged once they've been given. So, but if you look back in his past history, I told people this is the first YouTube Pope in the sense that we have a lot of videos from his past. We didn't have that with the previous popes to a degree. Now, you can find all kinds of stuff, and I've seen a lot of good things that this Pope said when he was either a father or an archbishop and cardinal. So I'm hopeful. He spoke the other day to the Eastern Rite Catholic hierarchs and faithful gathered in Rome, and he talked about valuing the liturgical tradition of the East and that this is a treasure for the church. Well, the logic of that would say we value the liturgical tradition of the West, and we find room, hopefully, for the people like to go to the traditional Latin Mass, as did Popes John Paul II and Benedict. So I'm encouraged. He certainly has a great dignity, a serenity, and calmness in carrying out his first week of tasks. He made a visit to Genezzano, a shrine of Our Lady outside of Rome, run by the Augustinian fathers, and a great sign of Marian devotion. So, yeah, I expect that we're going to see a pontificate that is going to establish its own policy as regards its predecessors, and I'm encouraged because I see good signs.
Now, what would you, if he were to ask you, if he were to call you up and say, Father, what do you think my priorities ought to be? Would you have a list of like things that he should be doing right away?
Yes, I think, if he were to ask me that, I would say, Holy Father, thank you for putting confidence in me, and let me give you a few ideas. He needs to roll back fiducia supplicans and amoris laetitia. The main and principal job of the Roman pontiff is to confirm the brethren in the faith, which means to strengthen them in professing what is true Catholic teaching, not error or innovations that are erroneous and undermine Catholic teaching. So the notion that Pope Francis put forward that homosexuals who become a couple, which means that they enter into a sexual relationship, that they as couples are blessable by a priest, this is a notion repugnant to Catholic doctrine. We do not bless sin. And the odd thing is, of course, Pope Francis had, before fiducia supplicans, a year and a half previously, had authorized the publication of a document from the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith saying we do not bless sin, rejecting pressure for blessing same-sex or homosexual couples. So you don't have to go too far back to say we're going to return to what the Doctrine of the Faith said, and we're going to abolish fiducia supplicans. And that's an act of real charity, because it's telling people who are in homosexual relationships, the church loves you so much that we're going to rebuke the sin you've entered into to call you to repentance. Because, you're what's at stake here is your eternal salvation. So that is, of course, what needs to be done. Same with Amoris Laetitia. That document, the 8th chapter in particular, is regrettable. We do not allow people who are in adulterous relationships to receive Holy Communion because adultery is a mortal sin. And people who enter into such relationships publicly are not given Holy Communion. Pope Francis changed that. That has to go back. We can't continue that. Likewise, the moral theology in the 8th chapter of Amoris Laetitia has to be rejected, because it essentially says that at times, for some people, the commandments of God's law are impossible, and God doesn't expect obedience. That's repugnant. That is something that has to be removed. So those are two things I start with. The third one, you can guess, Latin Mass liberation. We just talked about that. A fourth thing would be that we should reaffirm that salvation is uniquely found in Jesus Christ, and that other religions are attempts to find God and to discover pathways of union with God, but that God has revealed the one pathway, his son, Jesus
Amen.
Christ. So the notion that other religions are pathways to God, no. They are attempts by people to find the pathway. The real pathway, the only pathway, is Christ himself.
Yeah. Amen. Praise be to God. That sounds like a good outline. Do you think he will go far enough as to completely abolish, like, say, fiducia supplicans? Because I think was it Cardinal Casper or Marx? It might have been Marx, who already put out a statement saying, I don't think he's going to abolish it. He's just going to reinterpret it. He's going to softball that. My paraphrasing his words, of course. So there's some that believe he's not going to go far enough, that he'll only try to, make statements or whatever, but he won't actually abrogate it. Do you think he will?
I don't know. I hope he does, because, I can't predict the future. Neither can anyone else. What I'm stating is what needs to be done. And what I'm hoping is that we'll be able to have rational and informed debate on the matter if such is required. So in other words, if Pope Francis's teachings are continuing to be put forward by Pope Leo, we'll say, well, Pope Leo, this is inconsistent with the following aspects of Catholic doctrine, and we'd like to have a discussion. Now, remember, the Dubia cardinals wanted to do just that. They sent to Pope Francis the questions asking how is it compatible with Catholic doctrine to say that divorced and remarried people are entitled to receive communion. Pope Francis refused to enter into a dialogue with them. He did not answer the Dubia questions. And that policy resulted in a deadlock, meaning that cardinals and theologians and priests like myself would issue documents or go on television and say, we need to change this teaching. And then that was viewed as an, improper disrespect toward the Pope, which it wasn't at all. It was simply saying we need to discuss and come to an understanding of why it is that people who were taught Catholic theology are not able to reconcile this with the teaching that Pope Francis was issuing. I hope Pope Leo would, if he were to engage in that kind of discussion, we could convince him, people like Cardinal Burke and Muller and Sarah, be able to convince him that it is wrong to claim that Catholicism is a religion in which mortal sin no longer disqualifies you from receiving communion.
What do you think his biggest challenge is going to be in the near term?
Bunch of challenges. I'll say the first one he should address is to get the Vatican finances in order, which means he has to reform how money is spent by the Vatican, how money is taken in. The Vatican has a lot of assets, but I don't know that, based on what I've read, I don't think they're properly invested. You certainly have to solve employment matters, pensions. We should really look at how many employees the Holy See really needs. One of the areas I think the Holy See has to look at is its media operations. I have a feeling that they're stuck in a legacy position, meaning they're, putting out the kind of media that worked 40, 50 years ago, but not necessarily useful now. So I have to look at that. The major budget lines for the annual expenses of the Holy See are media and diplomacy, the Vatican embassy. So we have to look at how could you make savings in those regards in order to reduce cost. And then just the total number of institutions and employees that the Holy See needs to maintain. What the phenomenon in the Western world is, the expansion of bureaucracy is interpreted by the people in charge as being more efficiency in accomplishing their mission. And we live in the age of Doge. We don't need the same number of employees in 2025 as were required 50 years ago because of efficiencies related to technology and other aspects. So, I think a Doge approach to Vatican finance would be one of the first things that Pope Leo should look at. And I hope he would, because, once that's solved, then we don't have to worry about every 3 months or so getting an article saying, there's a $2 billion euro hole in the pension fund and the employees are nervous. We don't need that.
Yeah, let alone the financial scandals that have rocked the Vatican Bank now, going back many, many, many years, that seem to never get corrected, no matter who tries. Pell, Vigano, or whomever, the ex-auditor general suing them because he got dismissed after he started digging up some things. So, it seems like that's a huge challenge to overcome. Do you think what nobody has a crystal ball, but does he have the chance at coalescing the right people? Because that's one of the other things I think it needs to happen is he's got to get the right people in the right positions to be able to pursue any agenda whatsoever. Do you think he'll start replacing some of these heads at these dicasteries and getting men to come to Rome who will be on his team and help him?
Yeah, I think he can do that. It's one of the good things that we have now is a broader and wider consciousness among the Catholic people of the actual situation of the Holy See. So I think it'd be very easy if he got, Cardinal Pell was a great choice by Pope Francis. Unfortunately, he wasn't supported in his efforts, but, find the new Cardinal Pell and then tell him, go out and find the best people who can advise on all aspects of, running a major operation such as the Vatican, and come up with a plan. And, this This can be done. It's a matter of personnel and will. You pick the right person, and then you actually say, we're going to follow through.
All right. Father Gerald Murray, so glad to have you back. Praise be to God. I enjoyed your coverage with Raymond DeRorio, and Robert Royal was excellent. We'll be linking to that as well in the show notes.
Did you like that video? It's okay. You can admit it. It's perfectly fine. Hey, we cover the big stories of our day, from inside the church to outside the church to all points in between, and we do it from a Catholic perspective. It's called A Catholic Take. It's a radio program Monday through Friday. We live stream it right here on this channel, by the way, so make sure to subscribe, like, and share. We would be very grateful to you. And don't forget, you're going to want to watch this video right here because you don't want to miss anything.